we started discussing about design of reinforced concrete structures. In that subject, in the design of singly reinforced rectangular beams, some of the design specification we already seen. Just revise a little bit. So there are some requirements of reinforcement in the beam. IS 456-2000 has given some details as to how much should be the minimum reinforcement. For example, how much should be the minimum reinforcement at least be present in the any structural element? What should be the maximum amount of reinforcement that is permitted in a structural element, right? And what should be the cover to be provided to this reinforcement? Why the cover is important to provide in any structural elements? And then we will also discuss about spacing of reinforcement. This thing we will be discussing in today's class. And finally, control of deflection, which is a very important one. Okay. So as we discussed yesterday, minimum reinforcement is provided in the structure, because if you don't provide any reinforcement, the structure will fail in a brittle manner and a sudden manner. And also to take care of shrinkage and creep crack, it needs reinforcement. And also it stops any accidental overload due to vibration and all. This is why we provide minimum reinforcement, and the formula is given here in a way in a 26.5.1 of IS 456. This formula is given. AST minimum divided by FB into D equal to 0.85 FY. Okay, so this and all we discussed yesterday. Similarly, there is a how much should be the maximum amount of tension reinforcement to be provided. That is given in 26.5.1 B of as we discussed the 4% of grass area of the beam section. Okay, and same thing for the slab also. We'll see in later on how when we come to slab we'll discuss later on. But the maximum area of tension reinforcement shall not exceed 0.04 PD or 4% of the grass area. So, and we also discussed why there should be a restriction in amount of reinforcement to be provided. That and all we discussed. And the same thing like maximum compression reinforcement, it gives 26.5.1.2. It's also same 4% or 0.04 B into capital D, where D is the overall depth of the beam. Okay. Now today we will see side face reinforcement. Okay. Now what is this one? Suppose if what it says is when the depth of the web in a beam exceeds 750 mm. When the depth of the beam web in a beam exceeds 750 mm, side face reinforcement shall be provided along the two faces. The total area of such reinforcement shall not be less than 0.1% of the web area and shall be distributed equally on two faces at spacing not exceeding 300 mm or web thickness whichever is less. For example, this is called web. This vertical, this is called web. This horizontal portion is called flange, right? Now suppose if the overall depth is greater than 750 mm here, actually this is not D, here it says where the depth of the web is given. So depth of the web is only from here to here. Okay, from here to here, excluding the slab thickness. Okay, so if that is more than 750 mm, then you have to provide the side face. This is called side face reinforcement. This is called side face reinforcement. And the area of reinforcement is 0.1% of the web area. 0.1% of this web area. Okay, and that rod has to be distributed here and here. And the spacing between these two rods, spacing between this rod and this rod, this rod and this rod, this rod and this rod cannot be more than 300 mm. Or web thickness. Web thickness is this one, this B. Okay, so this is called side face reinforcement. It is given in 26.5.1.3 of IS 456. So if you go to there, here, it is side face reinforcement. When the depth of the web in the beam exceeds 750 mm, side face reinforcement shall be provided along the two faces. The total area of such reinforcement shall not be less than 0.1% of the web area and shall be distributed equally on two faces at a spacing not exceeding 300 mm or web thickness, whichever is less. Okay. In 26.5.1.3. Sometimes they do ask in a GATE exam or other interviews, so you should know what is the side face reinforcement is. Okay, next. Now, nominal cover to the reinforcement. This is given in class 26.4.2 of IS 456. 26.4.2. Okay. So what is saying? Minimum values for the nominal cover of normal weight aggregate concrete, which should be provided to all the reinforcement, including links, depending on the condition of the exposure described in 8.2/3, shall be given in table 16. Like if you see this IS 456 table 16, I'll just zoom a little bit. So here, normal cover to meet durability requirements. Suppose if your structure is exposed to very mild exposure, the nominal concrete cover should not be less than 20 mm. Okay. If if it is moderate exposure, 30 mm. If it is very extreme exposure, you have 75 mm cover you should give. Okay. We will see why we should provide cover and all in little while. Okay. So these are the different type of exposure where your concrete structure is going to be constructed. Accordingly, you got to adopt this much of cover in the concrete. Okay. So this is given in table 16 of your code, and this is here. If you see, just zoom more. Right now. Okay, either I can zoom or I can find as a point. I cannot do both. So here is a clear. This is called a ling or stirrups. This brown one, and this is your concrete exterior surface. And these are the main reinforcement, tensile reinforcements. Now the distance between the bottommost fiber and the bottommost stirrups, that is called clear cover, which we have already seen. Similarly, from the leftmost this concrete surface to the leftmost part of the stirrup is called side cover. Okay, this is called side cover. Now the distance between clear distance between two adjacent bar is called horizontal spacing of the bars. Horizontal spacing, SH is the spacing between these horizontal bars here. Now the vertical spacing between these two vertical spacing, right? That is called vertical spacing. Okay. So when they say this nominal cover is nothing but this clear cover. Okay. Here, if your structure is exposed to extreme exposure atmosphere, then this CC should be minimum of 75 mm. Minimum of 75 mm. Okay. Likewise, CS also will be providing same 75. Okay. And there should be minimum space, because this spacing is very important. Suppose if let us say you have provided more reinforcement here like this, when you pour concrete, the concrete may not pass through this. That is why they have asked to maintain minimum, what should be the minimum cover to be provided and all that we will see now. Okay, so you have nominal cover for durability requirements, and that is clear cover or nominal cover to the reinforcement. This is side cover, and this horizontal spacing. This is a vertical spacing between the bars. This vertical spacing in the bar comes only when there are more than one layer of reinforcement. Here one layer, here is another layer. So if you have only one layer, automatically this will not arise, SV will not arise, but SH will always be there. Okay, SH, horizontal spacing between these two parts always will be there. Okay. Now, if for a main reinforcement up to 12 mm diameter bar, for mild exposure, the nominal cover may be reduced by 5 mm. Suppose if you are using a mild, if your structure is situated in mild exposure, and you are using only 12 mm diameter bar, then you can reduce, instead of 20 mm, you can provide only 15 mm nominal cover. For example, in the case of slab and all, suppose your slab is situated, your structure is situated in a mild exposure condition. In the slab, you don't go normally more than 12 mm diameter bars and all. So at that case, you can reduce the cover by 5 mm, that is given. Okay. So unless otherwise specified, actual concrete cover should not deviate from the required cover by plus 10 mm. You can have a more cover but not less cover. That is why the tolerance is given here in plus 10 mm or 0. There is no minus value here. Okay, the tolerance is always plus 10. You can have a minimum cover of 20 or 30 like that. Okay. So for exposure condition severe and very severe, reduction of 5 mm may be made where the concrete grade is M35 and above. Suppose if your grade of concrete is more than M35 or above, then you can reduce this for a severe and very severe condition. 45 and 50 can be reduced by 5 mm. So it can be 40, it can be 45. So these are the questions many times they ask in the competitive examination. So you should remember this because cover is the most important one. Okay. Now CC is the clear cover. C is the clear side cover. SH is the horizontal spacing between the bars. SV is the vertical spacing between the bars that I discussed. Now, what is cover? Cover is the shortest distance between the surface of a concrete member and the nearest surface of the reinforcing steel. Too large cover reduces the effective depth and is prone to cracking, whereas too less may lead to corrosion due to carbonation of concrete. Okay, so your cover cannot be abnormally cannot be very greater value or higher value, or it cannot be very less value. If you provide a very too much of cover, as you say that effective depth means total depth minus effective cover. Suppose if the effective cover you provide more and more, then you are reducing the effective depth, and the crack it will be susceptible to crack more. Why? Because I'll tell you here. Suppose let us say you have a rectangular beam and another rectangular beam have. Let us say in one case I have provided reinforcement at the little above, and another case I have provided reinforcement at a small cover. Right now, what will happen is, suppose if this beam is a simply supported beam, and this is a cross section, this is a cross section, this is a section XX. Now, obviously, when I load this structure, all the bottom fiber is going to be in tension. So, because now the reinforcement is placed at a larger distance, you can develop this much crack. The cracking possibility is there up to here. But here means cracking only here only, this much only. It may fail up to only this much. So that is why too large cover reduces the effective depth and is prone to cracking, because the space available for cracking is more. So more crack will form if you provide enormous amount of cover. Okay, this is a cover. So this is the small cover, so the cracking will be less. And suppose if you provide very less cover, for example here, I provided only this much. So because of this, it is very close to the atmosphere. This due to carbonation of concrete, all this reinforcement will get corroded, and eventually structure will fail. So that is why you should be very careful about the covers. Okay. Okay. Now next. Now why the cover to the reinforcement is needed? These are the following points. The concrete cover. First, 1 second. See, the concrete cover protects the steel reinforcement against corrosion in two ways: by providing barrier against the ingress of moisture and other harmful substances, and forming a passive protective film on the steel surface. Okay, because your concrete is protecting the reinforcement, so it will be free from corrosion and moisture ingress and all. Okay, that is why one of the reason for providing concrete cover. Next, the cover provides corrosion resistance, fire resistance, and a wearing surface. Okay, and the cover is also required to develop the bond between reinforcement and concrete. Okay, suppose let us say your cover, if this cover is very less. Suppose let us say your cover is, this cover is very less here. Basically these reinforcements all this reinforcement only because of the surface contact with the concrete is tightly bonded together with the concrete. Suppose if you provide lesser and lesser cover, the surface area available, like for example, let us say you provided a reinforcement something like this, where this is the surface of the concrete. So only this much surface is in touch with the bonded with the concrete, and this much is not bonded with the concrete. So obviously, there if due to application of load, there is a possibility that this rod may come out or slip between. So to develop bond between reinforcement and concrete, the rod should be thoroughly, there should be bond on all over the surface. Okay, that is why you should give sufficient cover. That is one of the important point to be noted. And next, sufficient concrete on all sides of each bar to transfer forces out of the bar, that is to develop sufficient bond. That is what I will discuss now. Now sufficient space for the fresh concrete to flow around the bar and get compacted. So if cover is not provided, the concrete will not flow around the bar and it will not get compacted properly. So there will be voids present in the concrete structure. As soon as there is a void, there is a great possibility of cracking. And sufficient space to allow vibrators to reach the bottom of the beam. So these are the reason why you should provide cover to the reinforcement in any concrete structural element. Okay. So now let's see here. This is one live structure where you can see here, because sufficient cover is not provided here. It is easily visible. It is all the reinforcement is easily visible, and after some time, what happened? All this reinforcement will get corroded. This longitudinal reinforcement and the stirrups and all will get corroded, and naturally this structure will get very easily fail. Soon, let us say if the structure is designed for 100 years, this will fail very fast because the cover is not provided properly. Okay. So now, what is the minimum spacing between the main reinforcement? As I told you, there is a horizontal spacing and there is a vertical spacing. Now, minimum spacing between the main reinforcement is given 26.3.2 A of IS 456. So what it says is here, this is the minimum, this is SH. So SH minimum, a horizontal spacing between bars. The horizontal spacing between two bars, two parallel main reinforcing bars shall usually be not less than the greatest of the following. You have the diameter of the main reinforcing bars. These are this is the bars. These are the main reinforcement steel, and you know the diameter of each bars. Okay, so your minimum horizontal spacing should be more than the diameter of the main reinforcing bars. Diameter of the larger bar, if the diameter are unequal, sometimes you may get a different diameter bars in this one. So yeah, the diameter of the larger bar you should take. And lastly, 5 mm more than the nominal maximum size of the core aggregate. Normally we use for beam and all 20 mm core aggregate we use. So your minimum cover should be more than 25 mm. Is that clear? These are the three criteria. Suppose if the diameter is uniform, all the reinforcing bars are uniform diameter, then the SH minimum should be greater than diameter of the main reinforcing bars. And also, if you are providing different diameter main reinforcement, then the diameter of the larger bar should be considered, and 5 mm more than the nominal maximum size of the core aggregate. So usually, if you take 20 mm, it should be 25 mm. So whichever is the greatest value among these three, your SH minimum should be not less than these three values, greatest of these three values. Please mute yourself. Now, similarly, the vertical, I will show you here 26.3.2. Here, you read here. Minimum distance between individual bar. The following shall apply for the spacing of bars. The horizontal between two pair, whatever I have presented there, same thing. Diameter of the bar, if the diameters are equal. The diameter of the larger bar, if the diameters are unequal. 5 mm more than the nominal maximum size of aggregate. Okay. So this is one, and there is a note given that you can study later on. Now This is the minimum distance between the individual bar. Okay. Next. Similarly, the minimum distance between vertical spacing between these two bars. The vertical distance between two bars of main reinforcing bars shall usually be not less than the greatest of the following: 15 mm. This distance should be 15 mm, or 2/3 the nominal maximum size of the aggregate, or the maximum size of the bar, whichever is greater. Okay. So the minimum distance between these two bars will be, you should not be less than 15 mm. You should not be less than 2/3 of the maximum nominal maximum size of the aggregate. You should not be less than the maximum size of the bar. Okay, it should satisfy all these conditions. This also will be given somewhere. It is there. Here, where there are this here. Okay. Where there are two or more rows of the bar shall be vertically in line. And also remember, these bars should be aligned vertically. You cannot have one reinforcement here, another reinforcement here. The vertically it should be aligned properly. All the reinforcing bars should be vertically aligned. Okay. You cannot have one bar here, one bar here, one bar here like that. All the bars in every column, the bar should be aligned in a straight line. That's what. So the minimum vertical distance between the bars shall be 15 mm, or 2/3 of the nominal maximum size of the aggregate, or the maximum size of the bar, whichever is greater. Okay. So this is the minimum vertical spacing. While designing, you should remember all these things. Otherwise, your design is not correct. Okay. Next, now maximum horizontal spacing between main bars. So this SH has both a minimum value and maximum value. Minimum value is this one. Similarly, you cannot have a very long spacing also, because again the crack will be easily developed. So what is the maximum spacing of the horizontal? That is given in 26.3.3a. So we will read that here. Maximum distance between bars in tension. Beams, for the beam, the horizontal distance between the parallel reinforcement bars or grooves near the tension face of beam shall not be greater than the value given in table 15, depending upon the amount of redistribution carried out in analysis and the characteristic strength of reinforcement. So in table 15 here, they are given here clear distance between the bars. Suppose if you have Fe250 steel, these are the percentage distribution steel. If nothing is given, you always take 0 only. You will always take this value. Suppose if redistribution is not given, you will take this value only. If you Fe250, you have 300 mm. If you Fe5, you have 180 mm. If you have Fe500, your horizontal spacing should not exceed 150 mm. Only three values to be remembered: 300 mm, 180 mm, 150 mm. Okay. As you increase the grade, your spacing should keep on reducing. Okay, that is the maximum horizontal spacing between main reinforcement. Okay, that is given, same table is represented here. Okay, so here the spacing given in the table are not applicable to the member subjected particularly to aggressive environments, unless in the calculation of the moment of resistance Fy has been limited to 300 Newton per millimeter square in limit state design, and sigma ST is limited to 165 Newton millimeter in working stress method. Suppose if you are going to design the structure in a very aggressive environment, your Fy under any case cannot exceed 300 MPa. This is one of the important point to be noted. Like here 250, 415, 500 are all there. So if your environment is very aggressive environment, your Fy cannot be more than 300 MPa. Sorry, in the limit state design, and 165 MPa in working stress design. Okay. Now, what is the control of deflection? This is the by far most important check to be made, because we do not want the structure to be deflected. So for the control of deflection, your class number 23.2.1 of IS 456 says some criteria. So here I will show that one. here. (23.2.1). If you see here, control of deflections here. 23.2 is a control of deflection. Now in the design of singly reinforced beam and doubly reinforced beam or T beam, we will use only this one. Above also there is a something is there that we will not use, that is for a long term deflection. This is the short term deflection. Okay, now we will use for this course we will use only these things. 23.2.1. The vertical deflection limits may generally be assumed to be satisfied, provided that the span to depth ratio are not greater than the values obtained as below. So basic values of span to effective depth ratio for span up to 10 meters. Suppose if your beam is up to 10 meter span or less than 10 meter, then the span to effective depth cantilever, if it is if you are designing a cantilever beam, this basic value should be 7. Span to effective depth ratio should be 7. Suppose if you are designing a simply supported beam, your span to depth ratio can be 20, up to 20. If you are designing a continuous beam, your span to depth ratio can be 26. Okay. Now, suppose, and remember this is a basic value. It is written here. It is a basic value. Note down this point. It is a basic value. These are the basic value. Now, this basic value should be modified according to your conditions. For example, here in the point B, say for span above 10 meter, the values in A may be multiplied by 10 by span in meters, except for cantilever, in which case deflection calculation should be made. Suppose if you are designing a beam of span 15 meter, then this should be this should be multiplied by 10 by 15, like this, because that is a 10 by span. You have to multiply this value with the 10 by span, actual span. Suppose if it is less, you can take this value only. Now, depending upon the area of and the stress of the steel for tension reinforcement, the values in A or B, because if you have more span than 10 meter, then value will be B value. So values in A or B, these values should be modified by multiplying with the modification factor obtained as per figure 4. So figure 4 is given in the bottom here in the next page, page number 38. Here is the figure 4. This is called modification factor for tensile reinforcement. These are the different stress level and the tension reinforcement. So we will be using for designing the structure. Okay, these are the for the deflection. And the next one. So first one is a basic value. B is if the span is more, you have to multiply with that span factor. Next, according to the amount of reinforcement, tension reinforcement provided, modification factor should be applied. Now, fourth point is depending upon the area of compression reinforcement. Suppose if you are designing a doubly reinforced beam, in doubly reinforced beam, you have a reinforcement in the compression side also. So for that also, you have a modification factor given in figure 5. That is this one. This is figure 5, modification factor for compression reinforcement. So this you should use to find out modification factor. Similarly, the last point is if you are designing a T beam, then how to find out the reduction factor. So these are the 5 factors that you should consider for designing a structure and based on control of deflection. Okay, so these are I discussed basic value of span. This is in the code. I just retyped here. Okay, just for the sake of clarity. Now, if the span is above more than 10 meter, this should be multiplied by 10 by span. Now, these are all already discussed. Now, what are the guidelines for choosing dimension? Remember, sometimes these guidelines are not there in the code directly, but these guidelines are given by the engineers who is working in the field for several decades. So they have seen the structure for a long life, and by the experience they have given some guidelines. So first one, it is often recommended to have an overall depth to width ratio. That is, overall depth is capital D divided by width of the beam, B of the rectangular beam in the range. It should be 1.5 to 2. Capital D by B should be equal to 0.5 to 2. Though it may be higher up to 3 for beam carrying very heavy loads or having larger spans. Okay, so if you have a normal load in normal span, your d by overall depth divided by width of the beam should be in the range of 1.5 to 2. That is why if you look at any structure in a reinforced concrete structure, any actual structure, frame structure, your width of the beam will always be less, depth will be more, because when you provide more depth, you are getting more moment of resistance, because moment of inertia is B d cube by 12. So depth will always be more. Okay. That is the first thing. You can have d by b ratio between 1.5 to 2 for a normal span and normal load. Secondly, the deflection requirement in class 23.2 of IS 456-2000 often control the depth of the beam. So you have to find out the depth of the beam, like as we saw in the previous slide. For cantilever means span to depth ratio is 7. For a simply supported beam, span to depth ratio 20. Similarly, for continuous beam, it is 26. So from that also you can find out the depth of the beam. Now, third one, the width of the beam necessary to accommodate the required number of rod is dependent on the side cover and minimum spacing. These widths should be equal to or less than the dimension of the column into which they frame. So what is mean here is, suppose, let us say this is my brickwork of 230 mm thickness. This is another brickwork of 230 mm thickness. This is a hall, let us say. This is a hall. This is a plan, okay, this is a plan. And this is your brickwork all around 230 mm thickness brickwork. Now suppose if you are providing a beam here, right? This is a beam, this beam width, this width of the beam, this is the width of the beam. This width of the beam should never be, this B should always be less than or equal to width of support. This is the width of support, okay, onto which it is relating, okay. So this is only 230 mm. So this width of the beam should always be less than or equal to width of support. B should never be greater than the width of the support, okay. So it could be a brickwork or it could be column also. Let us say it is resting on column. That here they are saying column. These widths should be equal or less than the dimension of the column into which they frame. So this beam can have a width either less or equal to this column or the width of the support. Okay, that is one of the very important point to be noted. Okay, next, it is economical to select singly reinforced section with moderate percentage of tension reinforcement, which will result in ductile section. Okay, so singly reinforced with less tension reinforcement will result in ductile reinforcement, because less tension reinforcement means under reinforced section, under reinforced section means ductile section. Now at least 2 rods must be provided as a tension strip, and not more than 6 bars are to be used in one layer, because 2 bar at the bottom as a main reinforcement is must, because to tie the stirrups you should have 4 rods in 4 corners. So at least 2 rods must be provided as a tension strip, and not more than 6 bars are to be used in single layer. It is preferable to adopt a single size of bars or 2 size at the most. Like here, either you adopt a single size of bars, all bars, or at the most you apply only 2 sizes. When the 2 sizes of bar are adopted, it is better to choose such that the sizes do not vary much. For example, suppose you are in a beam, you are providing 16 mm diameter bar, and another next diameter either you can have a 18 or 20. You cannot provide 32 mm diameter because the difference is too much. So whenever you are providing 2 different type of steel with 2 different diameter, the diameter should be close to each other so that the variation is not much. So this also you should keep in your mind. Okay. Now the continuation, often 2 bars are used as hanger bars, which are placed in the compression side of the beam. The purpose is to provide support of the stirrups and to hold them in the position. As I told you, in a singly reinforced beam, the top 2 bars are called hanger bars, and that are the only purpose is to provide support for the stirrups and to hold the main reinforcement in position. That's all. The minimum diameter of the main tension bar should be 12 mm and that of the hanger bar should be 10 mm. So if you are using main tensile steel minimum it should have a 12 mm diameter. You cannot go below this. And hanger bars or the anchor bars, it should be 10 mm. 8 mm also people use it, but 10 mm is prescribed nowadays. Now the usual diameter of the bars adopted in practice are 10 mm diameter for stirrups, 12 mm, 16 mm, 20 mm, 22 mm, 25 mm, 28 mm, 32 mm. These are the diameters of rod that are available in the market. So you cannot have a 13.5, 14.5, 15 like that. You cannot have. These are the diameter of the reinforcement that is available in the market. So you can use only this kind of diameter bars while designing the structure. Now, if the two different sizes are used as a reinforcement in one layer, the larger diameter are placed near the faces of the beam. It is preferable to keep the rods symmetrical about the central line of the beam. As I told you earlier, what they're saying is, suppose in a beam, you are providing reinforcement, two different diameter. Let us say here you provided one reinforcement, here provided one reinforcement. Let us say this is the symmetrical axis. When you provide the reinforcement, your reinforcement should be symmetrical with respect to the symmetrical axis. You cannot provide, let us say three rod you have to provide. You cannot provide third rod something like this here. It should be symmetrical. Symmetrical means you are placing it at exactly in the center here. So like that it should be symmetrical. Suppose if we are providing 4 rods, it should be like this. Okay. With respect to the symmetrical vertical axis, your rods should be arranged properly, right? And if you are using like here, the larger diameter bar should be placed near the face of the beam. Means this larger diameter bar, let us say, it should be near to the. This is the face of the beam. This is also face of the beam. So this should be in the corner. But if you place here larger diameter, that means it is near to this face, but considering the side faces, it is not near to the side face. Okay, so larger diameter bar always placed in the corners. Okay. Now next one, when architectural constraints restrict the size of the beam, the required moment of resistance may be increased by increasing the strength of concrete or steel or by providing compressed steel to make them doubly reinforced. That we will see later on how to design doubly reinforced and all. And okay, now these are all the guidelines. Now before designing a structure, you should know how to find out the effective span of the beam. So it is given in 22.2 of your code. If you go back here, effective span 22.2. For a simply supported beam here, okay, read here, sorry. Suppose if you have a simply supported beam, the effective, this is for both for beam and slab. Simply supported beam, please. The effective span of a member that is not built integrally with its support shall be taken as clear span plus the effective depth of the slab or beam, or center to center of the support, whichever is less for a simply supported beam. So remember, it is given in 22.2 effective span. So I am going to show in the slide here. So for a simply supported beam, let us say this is the one support, this is the brickwork, this is another brickwork, and this is the beam, and this is called clear span. This is the face to face of the support is called clear span. Normally denoted by capital L. Again, some places they may tell small l also. That's fine. And this is the width of the support. This is the width of the support, and same. This is the width of the support. Now, effective span is the least of the following. First one is clear span plus effective depth. You will calculate the effective depth. This is the one criteria. Clear span plus effective depth or distance between center to center of support. That is, let us say here is a center of support, here is a center of support, or in other words L plus W, because W by 2 here and this is W by 2 here, so L plus W by 2. Sometime you may have this width as W1, this width as W2, then it will be L plus W1 by 2 plus W2 by 2. So you calculate these both values, whichever is less, that is called effective span of the simply supported beam. Is that clear? Any doubt in this one? Anybody so far? So as I told you, there will be a lot of references to the code in all of these things. So please make available with you the code all the time. I will not repeat 100 times anymore now. Now, similarly for a cantilever beam, you know this is a cantilever beam. This is the support and this is a cantilever beam. Let us say this is a clear span from the face of the support till the free end. That is called clear span. Now the code says the effective span is simply clear span. This is a clear span plus half the effective depth. That is for a cantilever beam. For a cantilever beam, effective span is given by clear span plus half the effective depth of the beam. Please remember once for all. Okay. So that is given in 22.2c. This is A is for a simply supported beam and B is for a continuous beam. We are not designing continuous beam now. So C is for a cantilever beam here. Here it is. Effective length of cantilever shall be taken as its length to the face of the support plus half the effective depth, except where it forms the end of the continuous beam, where the length to be center. You are not continuous, we are not taken, so you are going to restrict yourself up to here. Okay, up to here. Okay, so that is the effective span, right? In a design, what are the various steps involved in design of singly reinforced beams? First one is, remember in the introductory class, in the orientation class, I have discussed it is a design subject. In the design, if you have analysis problem, you will have a unique result. Everybody should get the same result. But if it is a design problem, you can have as many, same person can give 100 different answers also, depending upon what assumption you make. So steps are very important in design problem. The examiner will go through each and every step, whether you given the steps correctly or not. So steps are very important. So please pay careful attention to what are the steps involved in design of singly reinforced beam. First one is given data. Second one is determine the factored loads. Remember many times because it's a limit state method, in the limit state method we will always use factored load or design load or ultimate load or limit load. All are one and the same. Determine the factored loads means it should be factor load or a design load or ultimate load or limit load. All are one and the same thing. And from this factor load, you should find out factored bending moment using this factor load and effective span. Okay, that while solving the problem, you will know how to do that. Okay, that is the second step. Second step is to basically to find out a factored bending moment, because beams are always designed for bending and shear. In the second unit, you are having bending or flexure. So that is why all the main reinforcement are designed only for the bending moment. Shear reinforcement design we will do it in the unit 3, but here all the main reinforcement, tensile reinforcement are designed for factored bending moment in limit state method. So you should know how to find out bending moment values. Here comes the application of strength of material, shear force and bending moment diagram that you studied in SM1 will come here. Okay. Now third step is determine the effective depth required by considering the balance section for a given grade of concrete and steel. Or you can also consider the control of deflection, that L by D ratio. From that, we should find out the effective depth. What is the effective depth required? First effective depth required, you can use this one. Now fourth step, provide effective depth more than the whatever depth required for a balance section, whatever you found out, you provide little more than that is required to make the beam under reinforced section. You find out what is the effective depth required for a balanced section, and if you provide D greater than the D required for a balanced section, your section will become under reinforced section. Okay, because we want only ductile failure, that is why we have to design the beam as under reinforced section. Now find the area of steel AST required from the equation given in IS 456 in page number 96, right? You will see all those things. Now check that AST required is greater than AST minimum as given in the code. Whatever AST required you found out, that should be greater than AST minimum, and this is the your MU limit. From this you can find out AST limit also, that we will discuss later on. Okay. Now next step is find the number of rods and hence the AST provided. AST provided should be less than AST max. Okay. So whatever the reinforcement area you are designing in the previous step here AST required, that should be greater than AST minimum and that should be less than AST max. This check you have to make. Next one, step 5, check for the spacing of reinforcement, because you have to provide the spacing should be there, horizontal spacing should be there, cover should be there. Now finally check for control of deflection. Your beam should, your design should satisfy this control of deflection requirement. Finally, you have to draw the detailing of reinforcements, right? After designing, you have to do the detailing of the reinforcements. So that is the design steps. These are all the design steps. And if you have to, as I told you, this design question will come for 24 marks. So this is only 50% part we are seeing in this unit. 50% will come from the next unit, shear unit. Okay, because 24 mark question will be you have to design the beam both for the bending moment and shear force. Shear force design or shear reinforcement design is there in your third unit. So you will have to combine these two, both a beam design for a bending and shear. Okay. Now let us say some people have some doubt about. I want to clarify that. See, let us say, one second. Let us say you have to design a beam for a bending moment. Now you should always look out whether it is given as a factored load or factored bending moment. So I am saying ultimate moment, design moment, factored moment, limit moment. Sometimes they may say moment due to limit load, like that. These all are one and the same only. These are all MU. Okay, you have to take only this while designing. Sometimes they may give you simply they may give you bending moment or bending moment due to service load or characteristic load or working load. This is only M. Okay, so you have to check whether the given load. Sometimes you may have to find out the moment. For example, simply supported beam M is equal to WL square by 8. But when you work for a limit state method, you should always find out MU, WU. Okay, so how will you find out? You know this bending moment is M due to service load or working. Service load, working load is W. Okay, WRP, which if you have a suffix U in the load or in the moment, that is limit state method. If there is no suffix U, that is called working stress method. Okay, so now to find out MU is nothing but characteristic bending moment or bending moment due to characteristic load or service load or working load multiplied by partial safety factor for the load. So normally it is taken as 1.5. Okay, so this is your limiting moment or ultimate moment or a design moment or factored moment. Okay, please keep this in your mind while designing or analyzing the structure. Okay. Okay, now I want